Bad times to use the athletic butt slap.
Your Majesty?
I'm sorry, I don't think your wife's going to make it.
On behalf of the entire fourth grade class, we'd like to present you with the Best Teacher Award.
Oh, the hemorrhoids.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, None Braver Wednesday, February the 7th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the patriotic shorts, motivational shorts, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, the 33 Strategies of War, and the latest in the book, None Braver. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
In a country that's the finest place on earth, but some folks don't appreciate this land that gave them birth. I hear that up in Washington they're having an awful fuss, 'cause communists and spies are making monkeys out of us. The bureaus and departments have been busy night and day. They're figuring out just how we gave our secrets all away. And Congress has appointed a committee, so they said, to find out who's American and who's a low-down red. They called him up to Washington to speak for Uncle Sam. But when they asked them what they are, they shut up like a clam. I wish they'd take and put me on the witness stand today. I'd shout so loud old Stalin could hear me all the way. I'm no communist, I'll tell you that right now. I believe a man should own his own house and car and cow. I like this private ownership, I want to be left alone. Let the government run its business and let me run my own. Our government is bigger than it ever was today. The more they hire to work for it, the more they have to pay. Our public servants should be proud and honest, you would think, instead of taking bribes and dressing up their wives and men. The taxes keep on going up, of that there is no doubt, but still they just can't take it in as fast as they dish it out. Our national debt is monster size and growing every day. Our children's children still unborn are gonna have to pay. Our dollar used to be the soundest money on this earth, but now $2 won't even buy one good dollar's worth. Unless we stop inflation and take care of what we've got, the communists may win the fight and never fire a shot. Oh, I'm no communist, I'll tell you that right now. I believe a man should own his own house and car and cow. I like this private ownership, I want to be left alone. Let the government run its business and let me run my own.
Thank you. Now, the news.
The House Judiciary Committee now suing the FBI. Cheryl Casoni with the reasons now.
This is going to be something else, Maria. This is Jim Jordan. So the House Judiciary Committee is suing FBI agent Elvis Chan for defying a congressional subpoena for his deposition related to the government's alleged collusion with social media companies to censor speech. This is according to a report by Fox News Digital. The committee, which of course is led by Jim Jordan, believes that Chan was the primary liaison between the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force and social media companies. He was first subpoenaed back in September.
The president is not equipped to conduct the campaign, and I don't think, frankly, he's equipped to conduct the presidency. He's showing his age, and it's getting worse. It's painful, but please watch this as he tries to address the hostage deal.
There is some movement, and I don't want to, well, maybe choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry.
A reporter has to remind him of the name of the opposition, as he calls it. That is the terrorists, Hamas. Trump is the steamroller. Biden is not.
Country music singer Toby Keith has died this morning. A social media post from earlier this morning saying, quote, Toby Keith passed away peacefully last night, surrounded by his family. He fought his fight with grace and courage. Please respect the privacy of his family at this time. Back in June of 2022, he revealed he'd been battling stomach cancer for the last 6 months. He was receiving at the time chemo, radiation, surgery.
And that was the news. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the patriotic shorts.
August 2nd, 1990, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Well, I had just joined the F-117 squadron. By December, I deployed, and 30 years ago, nearly to the day, I was flying combat missions in Iraq. In that war, we didn't lose a single airplane. So 44 combat missions, primarily to Baghdad, hitting Saddam Hussein's palace. In 1991, I hit the Osirak nuclear reactor and blew it to smithereens. And it's just like you think about it. You're that 8-year-old kid that wanted to go fly. You're alone in the most secret airplane in the world. You don't have a wingman, and you're the guy that gets to go take this out for your country. It was a dream come true.
At 17 years old, he was Rookie of the Year on the New York Yankees Class A minor league team, where he was a rising star through their farm system. Less than a year later and shortly after Pearl Harbor, he enlisted in the Marine Corps, where he would fly a staggering 57 missions with Marine Scout Bomber Squadron 341, the Torrid Turtles. His name was Jerry Coleman, and he would settle into an all-star career with the Yankees, including a World Series MVP in 1950, before putting it on hold again to join the action in Korea, where he would fly 63 close air support missions with Marine Attack Squadron 323, the Death Rattlers. For his service in World War II and Korea, he received 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses and 13 Air Medals. After his playing days, Jerry Coleman would enjoy a Hall of Fame broadcasting career, stating at the induction ceremony, "The best thing I ever did wasn't with the Yankees or in broadcasting. It was being a Marine."
On April 14, 2004, Marine Corporal Jason Lee Dunham was participating in a reconnaissance mission as a rifle squad leader for the 4th Platoon, 7th Marines in Al-Karabila, Iraq. He heard gunfire erupt from a short distance away following the ambush of a Marine convoy. Corporal Dunham quickly ordered his squad toward the fighting. He and his team were soon under heavy enemy fire, so they dismounted their vehicles and proceeded on foot. His team intercepted several Iraqi vehicles attempting to depart the area and engaged. The Marines approached, and an insurgent leaped out and attacked Corporal Dunham. Dunham wrestled the man to the ground, but noticed he had released a grenade during the struggle. Corporal Dunham shouted a warning to his fellow Marines before covering the grenade with his helmet and body, bearing the brunt of the fatal explosion himself, and saving the lives of at least 2 other Marines. For his valor, heroism, and bravery, Corporal Dunham was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. Rest in peace, brave warrior.
As most of you know, number 8 is not a pilot. We might think we are, but we're not. I was a naval flight officer, so I had the opportunity to fly in a MiG-29. So my pilot was Alexander. So we went through the brief. We added another step in there. Was I pilot, you pilot, eject, right? And we're flying around, and then Alexander goes, you pilot. And I said, okay, I pilot. I can fly the Hornet. I can do some of these things. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to try knife edge pass, right? Bad move. Went to step on the rudder, and I missed it. And so then I put my foot back on it, and I throw the plane up like this. And then I roll like this, and then I go negative G. We're up in the seats, and we're down. And then so we come back, and I recover from that. We fly around a little bit, and we come into land. And Alexander gave me his sniper wings. I keep them with me. This is the highest rating you can get for a Russian pilot. But all I thought was, when he goes back to his ready room, he's going to go, man, that number 8 pilot, he sucks.
And that was the Patriotic Shorts. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, a little motivation.
One thing a motivational speaker is supposed to never tell you, or that you heard that a motivational speaker is never to tell you, is that you can't. You can't. You're not supposed to tell people they can't. That's no way to encourage anybody. Tell them they can't do something. But I will tell you tonight that the most powerful motivational speeches that I have ever heard came from people who told me I couldn't do something. You know why? Because when they told me I couldn't do it, I was bound and determined to show them that I could. Tell me I can't do it. I will prove you wrong. I will show you that you're mistaken. You have chosen the wrong one to tell that they can't do something. Because I believe, and this is real important, I can't will thwart you, will stop you, will slow you down, will turn you around and cause you to move backwards if you let it. But if you have the proper mindset, I can't will do nothing but make you that more determined to get to your goal.
People don't want to exude that much passion in which it becomes obsession because they're fearful of their obsessions. Well, if I'm obsessed about this topic, it's going to take away from my family, from my time. It's going to introduce a lot of, fear or unknowns to me. So they back off. But I tell people all the time, there is a difference between passion and obsession. And high performers have obsession about the topic, right? They are obsessed about the topic in which they're trying to learn, master, grow into. And so that obsession is real. And I tell people the difference, here's how you know the difference between the two. When you're passionate, everybody cheers you on. They're stoked for you. Oh, you found your passion? Awesome. Follow your passion. Live with passion. Be passionate. When you're obsessed, they're like, why you gotta be so crazy? Why can't you be satisfied? Why do you always gotta get things so perfect? Why do you spend so much time here? When you're obsessed, people think you're nuts. So it's different. And it's like, I always tell people, if no one thinks you're crazy, you're not yet operating to the outer limits of your potential. You're not there yet.
If you want to be great, not good, not also grand, not second, not third. If you want to be great, the very best at what you do, obsession is a necessity. You must be. Ain't no two ways about it. Obsession. Nobody got to be the best at anything. I don't care if you flip pancakes, you sweep porches, you wash dishes, you bust tables. If you're the very best at it, you are obsessed about it. And obsessed about it means you slept and you dreamed and you ate that. I will be the very best at what I do. I am determined to be the very best at what I am. And nobody can tell me that I can't do it because I am obsessed.
Somebody in your life should say, man, you really care about this in like a crazy way. And when you get there, you know you found your thing. And not everybody finds that.
Question the impossible. The greatest achievements of mankind were made by people who questioned impossible. The Wright brothers. We can't fly, it's no way. And we're supposed to fly, we were born with wings. Christopher Columbus. The world is flat, Chris, the world is flat. And at that time, it was accepted by everyone to be true. Question what people call impossible. 4 minute mile was the limit. No way possible. Okay, what color? No way possible. You're gonna run a mile in under 4 minutes. It just can't be done. Roger Bannister said, I think I can do it. I think I can do it. And he went out there and he proceeded to do just that. Not me, not I. You have chosen the wrong one to tell something like that to. I will show you what I can do. I will show you, I will turn your I can't, I will never, I won't, it's impossible. I will turn it around and I will show you that I can do anything. Anything. That is my message to you. Let the I can fuel your fire.
The sun doesn't shine every day. The storms will come. There are times when the nights will be long and dark and you will be alone. There will be times when the darkness seems to consume everything. But don't let it consume you.
What you most want to be found will be found where you least want to look, essentially. And it's so interesting because it means that if you're willing to turn around and to stand up, stand up straight and face the darkness like fully, what you discover at the darkest part is the brightest light. And then that's something that's so much worth discovering because there's going to be terrible darkness in your life. And it's going to make you cynical and bitter. And it could easily be that you're just not looking at it enough. Because if you looked at it enough and you didn't shy away and you brought everything you had to bear on it, you'd find that there was more to you than there was to the horror.
To anyone out there that's listening, that's started to go down in that hole, trapped in the chains of depression or addiction or rage.
You're going through a tough time. Maybe you're walking through real depression. Maybe you are in a valley today that you've experienced the worst failure of your life and you are on the verge of giving up. Maybe you're here today and your marriage is on the rocks. Maybe you're here today and you're dealing with anxiety on a daily basis.
You know what it's like to be in a lonely, dark place. You know what it's like to want to quit. You know what it's like when the pressure's overwhelming, when people expect your best, but you're at your worst.
That is a moment of choice. That is a moment of decision.
What will your response be? Are you going to sit back or are you going to step up? Adversity creates the perfect moment for audacity.
The human spirit doesn't care what's happened to your family. The human spirit doesn't care about the past. You may have been molested, or your family may have been broke, or you may have been betrayed, or you may have a divorce. Your human spirit doesn't care about any of that. Your human spirit simply says, what's our command for tomorrow? What do you want to create? It's not keeping score. Your brain is keeping score, because your brain is designed to keep you safe. Your soul, your intuition, your human spirit is designed to make you soar. And when you get to the edge of that stage, your brain will always tell you to step back. It's always going to tell you to step back, because you can fall. Always. It's going to tell you step back. Because before you fell, the last time you did this, you saw someone else fail. You could hurt. You could be off work. It's going to tell you. It's designed to keep you safe. So you have to be willing to play between your brain and your soul.
There are some things in life that are out of your control that you can't change, and you're going to live with. The choice that we have, though, is either to give up or keep on going. I want to ask you, what are you going to believe? Are you going to believe in yourself? Are you going to believe everybody else's judgment on you? Are you going to believe people when they say that you're a failure and no one really likes you, no one really cares about you? People ask you how you are and you say fine, but you're not fine, and they'll never know that. There are some times in life where you fall down, you feel like you don't have the strength to get back up. Maybe you have doubt in your life. Maybe you don't know for sure what's going to be happening in the future and it scares you. Maybe you're worried about what people think of you, what people say about you. Just that fear paralyzes you. And I just want to ask you today, do you think you have hope? You see, I will try 100 times to get up. And if I fail 100 times, if I fail and I give up, do you think that I'm ever going to get up? No. But if I fail, I try again and again and again. For as long as I try, there's always that chance of getting up. And it's not the end until you've given up. And just the fact that you're here should persuade you that you have another chance to get back up. There's still hope.
Sometimes you're barely making any progress. Sometimes you're barely making any progress at all. And that tough situation is making you want to stop. And what you eventually learn is you can't stop. When you're going through tough situations, you got to take that next step. You got to keep moving forward. And I know we're going through a pretty tough situation right now in a lot of different ways. Take that next step. Keep moving forward.
The only way to overcome the challenges that you face is to start walking. Every day, get up, take that step, and start walking. Even in the darkest times, even in the strongest storms, even when the sun is blotted out and the world is falling apart, the darkness cannot extinguish your light. Your will, your determination, no matter what is happening, no matter how hard the fight is, as long as you keep fighting, you win. Only surrender is defeat. Only quitting is the end. Because the darkness only wins if you let it. Do not let the darkness win. Fight. Fight on. To fight against the darkness is to win. So fight on.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of first responder action.
2345 South Pulaski in there, Burger King lot for us.
Southwest, there's two vehicles parked there. 2345 South Pulaski, can you transport from there, please?
Go ahead. But I'm clear from the back. Okay, 10-4.
We already parked for the Senate. We're going to be transporting to the 16 Northern last 3 on the mileage, 641. 10-4, 1543. 1112 Adam. Can you check out this alarm then right down the street from there, 1132 North Monticello, kitchen motion?
Yeah, that's where we can play right.
Yeah, I figured you were doing the search over there. It's right down the street. It's a reassignment. Appreciate it.
Were any Mandarin speakers able to come up? Since she speaks Cantonese as well, but Mandarin's better.
Okay, nobody came up, but if anybody speaks Cantonese or Mandarin, we would appreciate your help. I need a Cantonese interpreter or a 3314 Levitt. We need an interpreter.
Okay, I'm confused. So who is it that needs to come from roll call relieving 72? I didn't assign anyone.
Leaving, Detective Meade was going to sit on the juvenile, and as soon as we had a car available, we needed a car to go to Belmont Western, pick the juvenile up, and take him down to Juvie Hall.
And did you already assign somebody from Third Watch on the lake side?
I did not assign anybody. I was asking you to do that.
All right, 5376.
Yeah, 5376, I get all that. Let the transport know that the juvie's going to be upstairs in the SVU office, not downstairs.
The principal having a disturbance. They came over as a domestic battery. They're claiming to be abused.
First name of Adam, Union Sam, Edward Robert, middle initial N is in Nora, male black, about 6 foot, 175, birthday of 1 April, 98.
All right, how are you?
Domestic battery, 901 North St. Louis, 901 North St. Louis. Krishana's the caller. Brother's trying to fight with the aunt. They're trying to set the house on fire. Nothing further.
Picture of an optical store said that they were just robbed of glasses. The vehicle that took off was a Hyundai Elantra with the license plate number being Robert 407317. The vehicle was heading westbound.
All right, the beginning of transmission got cut out. So, where are you?
I'm in West Madison.
Or West Charleston.
And that was a little bit of first responder action. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the daily laws for February the 7th.
February 7th. The only shortcut to mastery. Freedom consists not in refusing to recognize anything above us, but in respecting something which is above us. For by respecting it, we raise ourselves to it, and by our very acknowledgement, prove that we bear within ourselves what is higher, and are worthy to be on a level with it. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Life is short, and your time for learning and creativity is limited. Without any guidance, you can waste valuable years trying to gain knowledge and practice from various sources. Instead, you must follow the example set by masters throughout the ages and find the proper mentor. The mentor-protege relationship is the most efficient and productive form of learning. The right mentors know where to focus your attention and how to challenge you. Their knowledge and experience become yours. They provide immediate and realistic feedback on your work, so you can improve more rapidly. Through an intense person-to-person interaction, you absorb a way of thinking that contains great power and can be adapted to your individual spirit. Choose the mentor who best fits your needs and connects to your life's task. Once you have internalized their knowledge, you must move on and never remain in their shadow. Your goal is always to surpass your mentors in mastery and brilliance. Daily law. Choosing the right mentor is like being able to choose your own parents. The wrong choice is fatal. Mastery, Chapter 3. Absorb the master's power. The mentor dynamic.
And that was the daily law for February the 7th, The Only Shortcut to Mastery, from The Daily Laws by Robert Greene. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Bishop Robert Barron.
You're not just dumbly here or a result of a cosmic accident. No, you've been willed into existence by God. Why did he create you? Because he's got a mission for you. Hey, it might not be what the world thinks is important. Who cares? What's your mission from God? Might be the quietest thing. It's little in the eyes of the world, but great in the eyes of God. Now, here's the point. Once you understand what that is, move, act. Don't procrastinate. Don't fall asleep. Go in haste. Don't waste time. Life is short, and the mission is clear. Be about the work the Lord has given you to do.
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Ayn Rand quote of the day. Quote, "The battle of philosophers is a battle for man's mind. If you do not understand their theories, you are vulnerable to the worst among them." Unquote. And that was the Ayn Rand quote of the day. Back in a minute. Thank you. So if you're a Democrat, you should be voting Republican and become a Republican because the pressure's off. On the Democrat side of the ticket, the Democrats are under constant pressure to produce paradise and to produce it yesterday. The Democrat Party is about 50 years behind schedule. They should have created paradise about 50 years ago, but they failed to do so. So the pressure is on, the pressure is on. Got to get the movement, got to get perfect. And from the time you get up in the morning until the time you go to bed at night, you're under the gun. Your fellow Democrats are looking at you, wondering why it is that you're going to Starbucks instead of doing something to create socialist paradise. But in the Republican Party, no such thing, because we're realistic. We know there's never been paradise, there isn't now, and therefore there is not going to be any type of paradise other than the second coming of Jesus Christ. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now we pick up where we left off with the 33 Strategies of War, Chapter 12, Lose the Battles but Win the War.
From Selected Military Writings by Mao Zedong. Epistemologically speaking, the source of all erroneous views on war lies in idealist and mechanistic tendencies. People with such tendencies are subjective and one-sided in their approach to problems. They indulge in groundless and purely subjective talk, basing themselves upon a single aspect or temporary manifestation, and magnify it with similar subjectivity into the whole of the problem. Only by opposing idealistic and mechanistic tendencies and taking an objective, all-sided view in making a study of war can we draw correct conclusions on the question of war. From The Strategic Advantage, Sun Tzu and Western Approaches to War. There is, however, much difference between the East and the West in cultural heritages, in values, and in ways of thinking. In the Eastern way of thinking, one starts with the whole, takes everything as a whole, and proceeds with a comprehensive and intuitive synthesization, combination. In the Western way of thinking, however, one starts with the parts, takes, divides a complex matter into component parts, and then deals with them one by one, with an emphasis on logical analysis. Accordingly, Western traditional military thought advocates a direct military approach with a stress on the use of armed forces. From the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's Counsel in Time of War. When dark inertia increases, obscurity and inactivity, negligence and delusion arise. When lucidity prevails, the self whose body dies enters the untainted worlds of those who know reality. When he dies in passion, he is born among lovers of action. So when he dies in dark inertia, he is born into wombs of folly. The fruit of good conduct is pure and untainted, they say, but suffering is the fruit of passion, ignorance the fruit of dark inertia. From lucidity, knowledge is born. From passion comes greed. From dark inertia come negligence, delusion, and ignorance. Men who are lucid go upward. Men of passion stay in between. Men of dark inertia, caught in vile ways, sink low. From The Odyssey by Homer. At this, the gray-eyed goddess Athena smiled and gave him a caress, her looks being changed now, so she seemed a woman, tall and beautiful, and no doubt skilled at weaving splendid things. She answered briskly, "Whoever gets around you, Odysseus, must be sharp and guileful as a snake. Even a god might bow to you in ways of dissimulation. You chameleon, bottomless bag of tricks. Here in your own country, would you not give your stratagems a rest or stop spellbinding for an instant? Two of a kind we are, contrivers both. Of all men now alive, you are the best in plots and storytelling. My own fame is for wisdom among the gods. Deceptions, too." From the Iliad by Homer. Then he saw Odysseus and asked, "Now tell me about this one, dear child. Shorter than Agamemnon by a head, but broader in the shoulders and chest. His armor is lying on the ground, and he's roaming the ranks like a ram. That's it, just like a thick-fleeced ram striding through a flock of silvery sheep. And Helen, Zeus's child, that is Laertes' son, the master strategist Odysseus, born and bred in the rocky hills of Ithaca. He knows every trick there is, and his mind runs deep. Antenor turned to her and observed astutely, "Your words are not off the mark there, madam. Odysseus came here once before, on an embassy for your sake, along with Menelaus. I entertained them courteously in the great hall, and learned each man's character and depth of mind. Standing in a crowd of Trojans, Menelaus, with his wide shoulders, was more prominent. But when both were seated, Odysseus was lordlier. When it came time for each to speak in public and weave a spell of wisdom with their words, Menelaus spoke fluently enough, to the point, and very clearly, but briefly, since he is not a man of many words. Being older, he spoke first. Then Odysseus, the master strategist, rose quickly, but just stood there, his eyes fixed on the ground. He did not move his staff forward or backward, but held it steady. You would have thought him a dull, surly lout without any wit. But when he opened his mouth and projected his voice, the words fell down like snowflakes in a blizzard. No mortal could have vied with Odysseus then, and we no longer held his looks against him. By Friedrich Nietzsche. Forgetting our objectives. During the journey, we commonly forget its goal. Almost every profession is chosen and commenced as a means to an end, but continued as an end in itself. Forgetting our objectives is the most frequent of all acts of stupidity. From Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. Plot against the difficult while it remains easy. Act against the great while it is still minute. Difficult affairs throughout the realm invariably commence with the easy. Great affairs throughout the realm inevitably commence with the small. For this reason, the sage never acts against the great, and is thus able to complete greatness. What is tranquil remains easily grasped. What has not yet betrayed signs is easy to plot against. The brittle is easily split. The minute is easily scattered. Act upon them before they attain being. Control them before they become chaotic. Trees that require both arms to embrace are born from insignificant saplings. A 9-story tower commences with a little accumulated earth. A journey of 1,000 kilometers begins beneath one's feet. From Aesop's Fables. The Wild Boar and the Fox. The wild boar was sharpening his tusks on a tree trunk one day. A fox asked him why he did this when there was neither huntsman nor danger threatening him. "I do so for a good reason," he replied. "For if I am suddenly surprised by danger, I wouldn't have the time to sharpen my tusks. But now I will find them ready to do their duty." The fable shows that it is no good waiting until danger comes to be ready. And lastly, from On War, by Karl von Clausewitz. This is as it should be. No major proposal required for war can be worked out in ignorance of political factors. And when people talk, as they often do, about harmful political influence on the management of war, they are not really saying what they mean. Their quarrel should be with the policy itself, not with its influence. If the policy is right, that is, successful, any intentional effect it has on the conduct of war can only be to the good. If it has the opposite effect, the policy itself is wrong. Only if statesmen look to certain military moves and actions to produce effects that are foreign to their nature do political decisions influence operations for the worse. In the same way as a man who has not fully mastered a foreign language sometimes fails to express himself correctly, so statesmen often issue orders that defeat the purpose they are meant to serve. Time and again that has happened, which demonstrates that a certain grasp of military affairs is vital for those in charge of general policy. Before continuing, we must guard against a likely misinterpretation. We are far from believing that a minister of war immersed in his files, an erudite engineer, or even an experienced soldier would, simply on the basis of their particular experience, make the best director of policy. Always assuming that the prince himself is not in control. Far from it. What is needed in the post is distinguished intellect and strength of character. He can always get the necessary military information somehow or other. The military and political affairs of France were never in worse hands than when the brothers Belle-Isle and the Duc de Choiseul were responsible. Good soldiers, though they all were.
And that was Chapter 12, the end of Chapter 12, Lose Battles But Win the War, from the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now we pick up where we left off in Chapter 3 with Michael Hirsch's book, None Braver. The team was, pararescue team was on their way to pick up a soldier that was suffering from high-altitude sickness when the helicopter crashed. And so now they are in very cold, it's dark, and they've set up a perimeter. They have one person that's badly injured, but everybody else seems to be okay.
There were very basic questions that needed answering. Where were they? They set about figuring it out on the map. Forrest says, I remember Jamie making a comment. We're not in a good location, because if I want to go look for a bunch of people hiding, I'm going to look at the only cluster of trees around, and guess what? That's the one we're in. The good news, of sorts, is that it is now snowing heavily, with visibility down to 15, maybe only 10 feet. So even if the locals could have seen the trees, it's not likely they will discover the crew unless they stumble into them. The temperature is obviously below freezing, which is causing a problem for several of the survivors. When they took off from Jacobabad, it was above 90 degrees, and the aircrew wasn't wearing heavy thermal underwear beneath their Nomex fire-resistant flight suits. The STS team was dressed in the standard DCUs and was probably better prepared for the weather they now found themselves in. Some of the aircrew had cold weather gear in their hit-and-run bags, but weren't able to find them when they had to quickly abandon the wreckage. Nicholas is fortunate that he does have his bag, and in it he'd packed a full set of DCUs, plus a turtleneck sweatshirt, watch cap, and Gore-Tex winter weight gloves, all of which he put on. He gives his Gore-Tex camouflage jacket to Abe, since the flight engineer is one of those who didn't have any extra clothing. By the time he's redressed himself, 2 or 3 inches of snow have accumulated on his gear. He settles into his post with his bag in front of him, his weapon on top of that. An early concern is making sure that the information they were transmitting about their location was accurate. They'd all heard horror stories from downed crewmen in Bosnia who transmitted the coordinates on their handheld GPS devices, only to learn later on that the instrument was wrong. Almost as soon as they left the helicopter, Nicholas fired up one of the 2 he'd brought with him, one personal, one squadron issued. Moments later, Clark came along and grabbed the GPS device that had been turned on so that he'd have his own and a backup when the time came to figure out where they were. While they are unable to directly contact Knife 04, they are able to relay information to their sister ship through the Hornets orbiting high overhead. Unfortunately, the weather has gotten so bad that 3 times they can hear Knife 04 trying to penetrate past the ridgeline near the village, and 3 times he has to turn around and leave the area. Soon after the 3rd try, they get word on the radio from the jets that they will have to move 7 miles to a suitable pickup zone. The actual message had gotten screwed up when it was relayed from Knife 04 to the jets and then passed on to the survivors, but they didn't know that. The result is that the tiny command group sucks it up and says, well, if we've got 7 miles to go, we'd better get going now. They know they aren't in a good place to defend themselves, especially with the weather beginning to clear up. At that point, Clark goes out and has everyone collapse into the center of the circle to be briefed. The plan is to hike down the valley they were originally going to try to fly into before the crash.
They have a healthy group of survivors and an injured group. By mixing and matching, they put together groups of 2s and 3s that can help each other and avoid spreading out too much. And then, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, they start walking. As they move out, Clark has the guys with extra clothing take some of the layers off. He knows they'll be working up a sweat, and if they are all zipped up with no way for it to evaporate, they run a greater risk of hypothermia. It doesn't take too long before the PJ team leader, the pilot, and the mission commander all come to the same realization. With the injuries their people have, they're not going to be able to go 7 miles very easily. Forrest says, I think we realize that we're over 10,000 feet, you're in freezing cold temperatures, you've got the stress of just going through a crash, and you've got injuries. I don't know how many healthy people out there who can go and do a nice hike at over 10,000 feet. Fatigue was setting in. In fact, I kind of got paranoid because I'm sitting there going, my God, I can barely get my breath. Hell, I can't be that far out of shape. Now I'm seeing the PJs who are in awesome shape and they're huffing and puffing just as much, so I felt a little better at that point. The upshot is that they realize that the valley they are in at the moment is actually a pretty good pickup point. So they find another hole-up site, mainly to take care of the badly injured guys. That's when G begins going into shock, and they start seeing hypothermia setting in on a few of the crew. Forrest says he was seeing confusion, frostbite in the toes. You see a lot of the shaking going on. The cold was getting so extreme. When you say bone-chilling cold, this was it. On top of that, hypoxia is beginning to set in. Hypoxia occurs most often above 10,000 feet in people who haven't been acclimatized. It's a state of oxygen deficiency in the body's tissues that causes impairment of function. The symptoms vary from person to person, are slow to develop but are progressive, and worst of all are insidious. Intellectual impairment is an early sign, making it improbable that an individual can comprehend his own disability. According to the Mountain Flying Bible, in later stages of hypoxia, thinking is slow, calculations are unreliable, memory is faulty, judgment is poor, and reaction time is delayed. It's not a condition that bodes well for assisting with their own rescue and fighting off the enemy if it should come to that. While the PJs weren't immune to the effects of the high altitude, Nicholas feels they tolerated it better than the aircrew. I was paired up with Ken, Curtis, for the movement south that 7 miles. He was leading and I was navigating right behind. We were the first 2 people out. At that hole-up site, I was sitting next to him. We had a long discussion about where he's from. I can't remember exactly, but he was up north where there's snow, so he felt like he was at home. He seemed like he was enjoying himself, to be honest with you. The PJs were very professional and did an outstanding job. The condition of G, the interpreter, was the greatest cause for concern. He was in significant pain, but they didn't dare give him morphine or any other drugs the PJs carry to battle pain. Forrest says, the main thing is you don't want to knock this guy out. We've got to hike 7 miles, and we're kind of looking at him for his input on what he thinks and what he needs. You don't want to do morphine or some other type of drug because it's more designed for someone in a controlled atmosphere where, all right, I can put you on the litter and I'm going to carry you. Well, sorry, I don't have a litter and we're going to be having arms over shoulders, and that's how we were actually walking that last quarter or half mile before we said we need to take a break and regroup. G was in the middle, hanging on to the shoulders of 2 of the healthy guys, trying to walk. It is becoming increasingly apparent to the mission commander that with their physical conditions deteriorating, a 7-mile hike is out of the question. That's when he sends a radio message to the pilot of Knife 04, telling him their GPS coordinates, their altitude, and that this is going to have to be the spot. The response is encouraging. Looks like we can probably try to do the rescue, but we're waiting for the weather to clear a little bit more before we come in. At this point, the guys who aren't injured are given security assignments, and everyone prepares to sit it out for an hour or so. Optimism returns. Help is on the way. But so are the locals. Nicholas says, we got compromised again. The weather getting better was negative, so to speak. They acquired us again, and they started yelling and screaming and shining flashlights at us when they were still several hundred yards away. The last thing the crew wanted was a firefight. In fact, earlier they'd been asked by pilots in the FA-18s about blowing up the wrecked helicopter, and Forrest said absolutely not. We don't start the fight. We don't want to start a fight, and whether it's a bomb dropping or us taking a shot, once the fight starts, all bets are off. so we didn't want to have any of that. As far as they knew, only residents of the small village nearby were aware of the crash, but there were several other villages on other ridgelines a mile or two away. If the jets had bombed the wreckage, everyone would know that something was going on, and in Nicholas's opinion, they would have been compromised and it would have jeopardized any rescue attempt. His concern wasn't that they weren't able to defend themselves. Unlike a fighter pilot who bails out with a 9mm pistol and nothing more, the crew had their rifles and sidearms and were lugging a significant amount of ammunition. We're 11 quite well-armed guys roaming on the ground here, and they don't know who we are, and it took them by as much surprise as it took us. So when these guys show up, our main thing is we just want to keep it nice and calm. This is when the decision not to give their interpreter, G, any morphine begins to make a whole lot of sense. We're talking to G, and he's trying to figure out what they're saying. He says they want to come talk, and we're basically telling them, no, just tell them to go away. We mean them no harm, go away. Then things begin to get dicey. 2 of the Afghans move down from the ridge they'd been on and start coming toward the crash survivors. They make it to the bottom of the hill, and then a 3rd man comes down. Nicholas recalls it in vivid detail. The 3rd guy kept his distance. It looked like a bad drug deal, you know? The guy stands off in the back, guarding everything, while his other guys go up to do the talking and negotiations. Tension rises as the first 2 men come within shouting distance. The Americans don't want to shoot, and they know that talking is going to be difficult for G since he is still in extreme pain from the injury to his back. Nevertheless, he puts down his weapon and struggles to his feet, then climbs on top of the bunker-type hill they've been hiding behind and begins talking. Captain Nicholas had high praise for what he did. The professionalism he displayed that day was immense. He worked it to where there wasn't a firefight and no lives were lost. Forrest concurs. Without G's language capability, about the only thing we would have been able to do is fire a shot to say, go away. Are they going to take that as a warning shot, or are they going to take that as a missed shot and the fight's on? The shooting would have had to start just to be able to say, oh, by the way, you're just too close. You got to go away. Because we can't let those guys approach us. While the talking is going on, 8 gun barrels are pointed at the interlopers, but Jamie Clark is moving from man to man, urging them not to shoot, to wait and see if they're armed and what they want. Nicholas had a set of binoculars in his hit-and-run bag that he gave to the other PJ, but he can't tell if the men have weapons. A couple of the survivors still have their night vision goggles, and they, too, can't tell if the men G was talking with are armed. It was an uncertainty that would continue to concern them as the night wore on. Forrest feels that when G began speaking the local language, it confused the 2 men. They couldn't figure out just who it was they were talking to. Anything we can do to keep a low profile, keep these guys guessing, where are we, who are we, what are we, is it a bad guy, maybe it's one of their local helicopters that crashed, who knows what. The idea is to keep as low a signature as possible, no lights, nothing. We just want to let them think it's a normal night, they heard a lot of banging, and go back to sleep. Whatever it was that G said, it worked. The locals, apparently friendlies, walked away. Then the crew is given another reason for optimism. The weather is clearing up. From total cloud cover and low light, it would go to 100% illumination as the moon broke through the clouds, lighting up the valley. Forrest, who was dealing with a lot of pain and an early stage of hypoxia, says he remembers that while they were talking, they suddenly thought they saw automobile headlights in front of them. The headlights turned out to be the moon shining across the valley. It is while they are waiting to get word when Knife 04 will be ready to try to pick them up that they begin pondering whether or not the helicopter will have enough power to evacuate all 11 men. That helicopter already has 9 people on board, and everyone knows how power-limited the MH-53s are at that altitude. Nicholas says, Frank and Jamie had a talk about who would go, who would stay, and that's a sickening feeling when you know 2 guys are sitting on the side talking about the fate of your life. Are you going to be a chosen one, or are you going to stay behind? I tell you the truth, I wasn't injured, and I'm thinking, shit, this sucks. How can I break my leg? I can get out of here. They came back and said, aircrew's going and the team's going to stay, which sucks for them. The team is the trio of special tactics operators, the 2 PJs, and the combat controller. We were trying to get a message back to Lieutenant Mike in the other helicopter, says Forrest. We were trying to get the answer to, what can you pick up? What's realistic? And the unfortunate problem was we had to go through the fighter guys, who then went over another relay net trying to talk back to our helicopter, so the translation didn't go through too well. But our main thing was, if he comes in and he's power limited, the first thing was, if you can only get 1 or 2 guys out, what do we do? If you can only get a few more guys out, what do you do? And Jamie was the first one to say, I'll tell you what, boss, there ain't no way I'm going out of here. I'm trained for this. I know how to do this stuff. If anybody's going to have to walk their way out, that's what we're going to do. The credo, that others may live, had just kicked in, and Forrest recognized it. From the days when I was in rescue, I had a PJ that I knew from Vietnam who jumped off a helicopter because they were so power limited they couldn't get out of an LZ. He jumped out and wound up walking out of Vietnam. It took him 6 days to get out. These guys realized that they're the best trained, best equipped person in the world to do their job. And then it was, okay, who are the first guys out? You get the injuries out because you're our gimps. You're the guys who are going to slow the rest of us down. The hard part was, me being one of the injured, I didn't like having to say that, yeah, I'm going to be one of the guys out. I'm also going to be the guy who's going to get these guys killed if I try to stay with them. And gee, he was our number 1. We got to get him out of here. We'd love to have the language skill, but he's just too injured. He's too hurt. One way to make it possible to get another 1 or 2 bodies on the helicopter was to dump gear. At the same time, it allowed them to make sure that any supplies that might be of use to the men left on the ground were given to them. The stay-behind bag held food, ammo, water, radio batteries, and warm clothing. The PJ team leader had spotted Nicholas's backpack and claimed it to carry the supplies. But first, the co-pilot had to empty it, which was a bit like emptying a magic Christmas bag. The more you take out of it, the more it seems to hold. I had everything from snakebite kits, aspirin, bandages, flashlights, fire starters, lighters, matches, candles, extra signaling mirrors, an extra GPS. To each item that he pulls out, the PJ team leader is saying, no, no, no. Then Nicholas says, well, I got an axe. You want an axe? He's like, you ain't got no fucking axe. And I said, yeah, I got an axe. He says, good, then dig a hole with that axe and bury everything. This is all taking place only about 30 minutes prior to the scheduled pickup by Knife 04. Except for concern that the STS team is going to be left on the ground, things are looking up. They're hearing on one of the radios that the helicopter is heading off to get some gas before coming in to try the rescue. It's in the midst of this rising euphoria that G goes into shock and collapses. Meantime, the combat controller has left their hiding place and gone out in the middle of the nearby field to mark the landing site. Realizing that they're all going to have to cross a little ridge and a stream to get there, the rest of the group follows, with Abe and Nicholas helping G walk between them, very slowly and gingerly. The object is to get G as close as possible to where the helicopter would be directed to land by the CCT, and they have nearly completed the journey when someone asks, what if the helicopter balls it in? That's Air Force jargon for crashing on landing, as in going down in a fireball. The thrust of the question is that they all realize the helicopter has 1 shot at making the landing. An acceptable batting average in this game is not 300. Only perfect will do. That's because landing a helicopter at this altitude requires a gradual reduction in speed. Once the aircraft is below a certain speed, it's committed to the landing. There's no way to ramp up power and fly out of it. It truly is a controlled crash. Making the landing even dicier is that it will be done in full whiteout conditions. That means that as the helo gets between roughly 100 and 150 feet off the ground, 1.5 to 2 rotor diameters, the downward thrust of air beneath it will hit the ground, causing the snow to billow up, completely obscuring the ground, eliminating any chance of maintaining a visual on a horizon, and filling the entire aircraft cabin, including the cockpit. Under those conditions, anything can happen, including an extreme bank angle resulting in a total loss of lift, and that rapid elevator ride down to the ground. Once the vision of that possibility made the rounds, the wisdom of moving well back from the intended landing site becomes apparent. It is at that moment that Clark notices that G still has his helicopter emergency egress device attached to his flight suit. The Heeds bottle is sort of a miniature scuba tank filled with enough air to give an aviator a minute or two to escape from a ditched helicopter and swim up to the surface. While it doesn't contain pure oxygen, the gas within it is certainly richer than the air they were breathing. Sure enough, after the PJ has G take a couple of puffs, some color comes back into his face. That's when Forrest realizes that he, too, still has his Heeds bottle. He pulls it out and hands it off to Nicholas, who at that point is quite literally falling to the ground with what was probably hypoxia-related exhaustion. After a few puffs, Forrest says the co-pilot seemed to just snap awake. It was like, "Hi guys, where you been?" Once again, a momentary euphoric high was crushed by reality. Knife 04 came in, flew over them, and left. "The worst feeling in the world," says Forrest, "is you have been waiting and waiting for somebody to come in and save you, and the guy comes, he flies over, he flies away, and you feel very lonely at that point." Had they still had their wits about them, they would have understood what Lieutenant Mike was doing. But all the guys on the ground can think is, where is he? What's happening? During what had to be the longest 5 minutes of their lives, they can barely hear Knife 04 and certainly can't see him. Everyone at that point has the same wish. They just want him to come in and get their asses out of Dodge. They're tired, they're cold, and they're ready to go home. Finally, Knife 04 comes back. Forrest has vivid memories of the scene. It's kind of weird when you watch it landing, because all of a sudden you see him come in and then the whiteout cloud comes over him. It was kind of like back before the crash, where we're flying and the 1 second he's there and the next second he's not. The snow envelops him, and your best sense at this point is your ears. You're just waiting to hear the sounds you want to hear, and that was the engines winding down as he lets out the power. Sounds that meant he didn't crash.
And that was the next part of Chapter 3, None Braver by Michael Hirsch. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.